Perfect timing. Just the girl I wanted to see. Officer Vincent?
Sergeant, what's going on?
Wade Corbin seized a fistful of Alice Vincent's hair as the other officers restrained her.
Regulation says you gotta look professional. Guess I'll help you out.
Get your hands off me.
Corbin opened the scissors and made the first cut. Snip after snip, Alice's hair dropped to the floor.
See? Doesn't that look better already? Now maybe someone will mistake you for a real officer.
What Corbin and his accomplices didn't know was that the woman they were humiliating wasn't destined to quit. She was destined to become the captain who would sign every one of their termination papers. Alice Vincent loved this uniform. She had wanted to wear it since she was 12 years old. Now she was 24, and it was hers. 6 months on the force. 6 months of proving herself, shift after shift. Her shift was ending. The sun was going down outside the precinct windows. Alice walked toward the break room, tired but happy, ready to grab her bag and head home. She pushed the door open. Sergeant Wade Corbin was standing right there, blocking her path. He was smiling, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse. He had scissors in his hand. "There she is," Corbin said. "Officer Vincent. Just the girl I wanted to see." Alice felt something cold move through her stomach. She glanced past him. Officer Tobby Gordon stood by the lockers, phone already up, already recording, filming her like she was a show. "What's going on?" Alice asked. Her voice stayed steady. She wouldn't let it shake. "Just a little department tradition," Corbin said. "Every rookie gets it. Nothing personal." Before she could step back, hands grabbed her from behind. Strong hands. Officer Raymond Miller. He locked her arms tight against her sides, lifting her slightly off her feet. "Let go of me," Alice said, sharp and clear. "Right now." "Relax," Miller said in her ear, laughing. "It's a joke. Can't you take a joke?" Corbin stepped closer. He reached out and grabbed a fistful of her locks, twisting them around his fist like he was holding a rope. "This isn't regulation," Corbin said, like he was reading her a rule from a manual. "Hair like this. Not professional. Not for a real cop." He looked back at Gordon's phone, grinning wider, playing to the camera now. "We're just helping you fit in around here." "Don't," Alice said. "Don't you touch me." Corbin didn't stop. He never even slowed down. The scissors opened. Alice heard the sound before she felt it. That terrible metal snip right next to her ear. Then another, and another. She felt the weight leave her head, piece by piece, felt the cold air on her neck where her hair used to be. She wanted to scream. She wanted to fight, to kick, to bite down on Miller's arm until he let go. Every part of her body wanted to explode. She didn't move. She had learned, in her 12 years of dreaming about this badge, that some fights you don't win by throwing punches. Some fights you win by watching, by remembering. So, instead of screaming, Alice Vincent did something else. She looked. She looked hard at Corbin's face. The little scar above his eyebrow. The gold tooth in the back of his laugh. She looked at Miller's badge number, glinting on his chest, close enough now that she could read every digit. She looked at Gordon's phone, at the little red light blinking in the corner of the screen, recording every second of this. She was building a case, right there, while they cut her hair off like she was livestock. "There," Corbin said, finally stepping back, holding up a thick clump of her hair like a trophy. He looked at it, then dropped it. It hit the floor without a sound, curling up next to her boots like something dead. "Much better," Corbin said. "Now you look like one of us." Miller let go, shoving her forward a step as he released her arms. Alice turned around slowly. She didn't touch her head. She didn't cry. She looked each of them in the eye, one at a time, and said nothing at all. Corbin laughed, uncomfortable now that she wasn't reacting the way he wanted. "Come on, Vincent. Lighten up. It's just hair." "Yeah," Miller added, already turning to leave, tossing the scissors onto the counter like he was done with a chore. "Grows back." Gordon lowered his phone, still chuckling to himself, and followed the other two out the door. Their laughter echoed down the hallway, fading as they walked away, already talking about something else, already forgetting. Alice stood alone in the break room. Her hair lay scattered across the tile floor. The lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a radio crackled with a dispatch call, ordinary and unbothered, like nothing in the world had just happened. Alice didn't move for a long moment. She stood there, breathing slow, staring down at the floor. Then she bent down, picked up her phone from her belt, and opened a blank note. She started typing names, badge numbers, the time, the date. She wasn't going to forget a single detail. Alice didn't sleep much that night. She kept touching the back of her neck, where her hair used to hang down past her shoulders. Now there was nothing there but short, uneven stubble. Every time her fingers found the empty space, her stomach twisted again. By morning, she had made her decision. She was going to file a complaint. A real one, on paper, with her name attached. No backing down. She got dressed for her shift and drove to the precinct, running through the words in her head. Sergeant Corbin restrained me. Officer Miller held me down. Officer Gordon filmed it. Simple, clear, true. She walked into the building and headed toward the locker room, ready to change before roll call. That's when she noticed the stairs. A pair of officers by the coffee machine went quiet the second she walked past. One of them smirked, nudged the other, and looked away fast when she caught his eye. Down the hallway, two more officers glanced at her, then at each other, then broke into laughter they didn't even try to hide. Alice's chest tightened. Something was wrong. This wasn't just about her hair. People were looking at her like they already knew something, like they'd already seen a punchline she hadn't heard yet. She found Officer Dove Whitlock by the lockers, pulling on her vest. Dove was quiet, a few years older than Alice, someone who mostly kept to herself. But when she saw Alice, her face changed. Her eyes went soft with something that looked like pity. "You haven't seen it yet," Dove said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Seen what?" Alice asked. Dove hesitated, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one else was close. Then she pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward Alice. It was Gordon's video. The whole thing. Corbin grabbing her hair. Miller holding her arms. The scissors. Her own face, frozen and silent, refusing to give them anything. The video had a caption underneath it, posted in the precinct's group chat late last night. "Welcome to the family, Vincent." Alice stared at the little red numbers under the video. 47 views. Then she watched the number tick up to 48 while she stood there. "It's been in the group chat since last night," Dove said. "Almost everybody's seen it. I'm sorry. I should have said something the second I saw it come through." Alice felt her face go hot, then cold. 48 people had watched 3 grown men hold her down and cut her hair off. And 48 people had laughed. Not one of them had reported it. Not one of them had reached out to ask if she was okay. This wasn't 3 bad men blowing off steam. This was a whole room full of people who thought what happened to her was funny. "Who posted it?" Alice asked, her voice flat and hard. "Gordon," Dove said. "But it's not just him anymore. Everybody's got it now. Everybody's talking about it." Alice looked down the hallway, at the officers still glancing her way, still whispering behind their hands. She understood something in that moment that she hadn't understood the night before, standing alone in the break room. this wasn't going to be solved quietly. If she reported it and let the department handle it behind closed doors, nothing would change. The culture that let this happen was too big, too comfortable, too normal to everyone inside it. She needed this on record, officially, with her name on it, loud and clear, so nobody could pretend later that it never happened. "Thank you for telling me," Alice said to Dove. "I mean that." Dove nodded, looking almost ashamed. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to Internal Affairs," Alice said. "Right now, before my shift even starts." Dove's eyes widened slightly. "Vincent, some of the guys aren't going to like that." "I don't care what they like," Alice said. She turned and walked out of the locker room, back straight, chin up, ignoring every pair of eyes that followed her down the hall. She could feel people watching her go, whispering behind her back, probably already guessing where she was headed. Let them guess. Let them talk. Alice pushed through the double doors at the end of the hallway, toward the small office marked Internal Affairs. Her hand was steady on the handle. Whatever happened next, she wasn't going to be the only one who remembered what those three men did to her in that break room. She opened the door and stepped inside. The Internal Affairs office was small and quiet, just a desk, 2 chairs, and a man named Lieutenant Logan Fenwick sitting behind a computer, glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked up when Alice walked in, and something in his face told her he already knew why she was there. Maybe he'd seen the video too. Maybe everyone had. "Officer Vincent," he said. "Sit down. Tell me what happened." Alice sat. She kept her voice steady as she told him everything. Corbin with the scissors, Miller holding her arms so she couldn't move, Gordon filming the whole thing like it was entertainment. She told him about the group chat, about the 48 views, about the caption calling it a welcome to the family. Fenwick listened without interrupting. His jaw got tighter with every detail. When she finished, he typed everything into his computer, his fingers moving fast. "I'm logging this as a formal complaint," he said. "Case number, today's date, timestamp, all of it. This goes on record, whether anybody upstairs likes it or not." "Thank you," Alice said. It was the first time since last night that she felt like someone was actually on her side. "I can't promise you what happens next," Fenwick admitted. "That's above my rank. But I promise you this complaint doesn't disappear. Not while I'm the one holding it." Alice left his office feeling something close to hope. That hope didn't last long. Days passed. Alice kept working her shifts, kept her head up, kept ignoring the whispers that followed her through the halls. She waited for someone to call her in, to tell her Corbin and the others were being punished. Instead, she got called into Deputy Chief Priya Osmar's office. Osmar sat behind a big desk, arms folded, looking at Alice like she was a problem that needed to be cleaned up quickly and quietly. "I've reviewed the complaint," Osmar said, "and I've talked to Sergeant Corbin and the others." "And?" Alice asked. "And it sounds like a joke that went a little too far," Osmar said, like she was reading off a grocery list. "Rookie hazing. It happens everywhere. Every department has something like this." Alice felt her hands curl into fists in her lap. "They held me down and cut my hair off. That's not a joke. That's an assault." "I understand you're upset," Osmar said, in a tone that made it clear she didn't understand at all. "But I've decided verbal counseling is enough for Corbin, Miller, and Gordon. This isn't worth destroying 3 careers over." "3 careers," Alice repeated. "What about mine?" Osmar didn't answer that directly. Instead, she slid a piece of paper across the desk. A transfer order. A precinct clear across the city. One known for slow, quiet shifts. The kind of place careers went to disappear. "I think a change of scenery would be good for you," Osmar said. "For your comfort. Given everything that's happened." Alice stared at the paper. They weren't punishing the men who assaulted her. They were punishing her for reporting it. She went looking for Fenwick that same afternoon, hoping he could explain what had gone wrong. She found him at his desk, and the moment she saw his face, she knew something was off. "I pulled up your case file this morning," Fenwick said quietly, not meeting her eyes. "It's gone, Vincent. Deleted. My supervisor told me to let it go. Said it was handled." "Handled?" Alice said. The word tasted like poison. "I'm sorry," Fenwick said, and he sounded like he meant it. "I logged it. I did everything right. Somebody above me made it disappear." Alice stood there for a long moment, looking at the empty screen where her complaint used to exist. 3 men had assaulted her, filmed it, and laughed about it with half the precinct. And the department's answer was to erase the paperwork and ship her across town like she was the problem. She wasn't going to stay somewhere that treated her like this. That evening, Alice sat down at her kitchen table and wrote her resignation letter. Her hands were steady as she signed her name at the bottom. The next morning, she placed the letter on Fenwick's desk. "I'll be back," she told him. "Not like this, but I'll be back." Fenwick looked at her, surprised, but he didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, like he believed her. Alice turned and walked out of the precinct, head high, refusing to let anyone see her cry. Alice didn't waste time feeling sorry for herself. 2 weeks after she resigned, she signed up for a new department in a different city, one that didn't know her name yet, one that hadn't watched a video of her being held down in a break room. She kept one thing from her old life, a small notebook, the kind that fit in her jacket pocket. On the first page, she had written down the case number Lieutenant Fenwick gave her, along with the date and time of her complaint. Even after the file disappeared from the system, she still had it written in her own hand. Proof that it happened. Proof that she reported it. Proof nobody could erase. Her new captain was tough, but fair. He didn't care about her hair, short and natural now, growing back slowly in soft curls close to her scalp. He cared about her work, and Alice worked harder than anyone. She took every extra shift she could get. She studied on her days off instead of resting. She wanted to be the kind of officer nobody could ever call unprofessional again, no matter what they thought of how she looked. 6 months in, she earned a commendation for talking down a man threatening to hurt himself on a highway overpass. She didn't tell anyone at her new precinct about what happened at her old one. She let her work speak instead. A year passed. Then 2. Alice enrolled in command school, sitting in classrooms full of officers twice her age, most of them men who assumed she was there to fetch coffee until she started answering every question correctly. She studied policy. She studied leadership. She studied the exact kind of accountability that had failed her back at her first precinct, learning how real departments were supposed to handle complaints, how real leaders were supposed to protect their people instead of protecting bullies with badges. She scored highest in her class on the command exam. Her instructors took notice. One of them, an older captain nearing retirement, pulled her aside after graduation. "You've got something most officers don't," he told her. "You don't flinch. Whatever happened to you before you got here, it made you sharper instead of smaller." Alice didn't tell him what happened. She just thanked him and kept moving forward. 3 more years passed like that, promotion after promotion. Alice moved from patrol to sergeant, from sergeant to lieutenant, each new rank earned through exams and performance reviews, never through favors or friends in high places. She built a reputation as someone who followed the rules, who respected the badge, and who expected everyone around her to do the same. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived at her desk. It was from the city she'd left behind. Her old precinct needed a new captain, and someone on the review board had pulled her file, impressed by her record, unaware of what had happened to her there years earlier. Alice sat with the letter for a long time before opening it. Inside was an offer. Captain of her old precinct. the very building where 3 men had held her down and cut her hair off, while a room full of officers laughed about it later in a group chat. Her hands didn't shake as she read it. If anything, something inside her settled, like a lock clicking into place. She pulled out her old notebook that night, the one with Fenwick's case number still written on the first page in her own handwriting, faded now but still legible. She ran her thumb over the ink. She hadn't left because she was weak. She had left to come back stronger, on her own terms, with her own authority, so that nobody could erase her file or her voice ever again. The next morning, Alice signed the acceptance letter without hesitation. She wasn't scared of walking back into that building. She wasn't scared of Corbin or Miller or Gordon or anyone else still working there who thought what happened to her was a joke. She was going back as their captain now. And this time, she was the one who decided what got buried and what got brought into the light. The precinct looked almost the same as it had years ago. Same brick walls, same tired hallways, same smell of old coffee and floor wax. Alice walked through the front doors carrying nothing but a small box of belongings and a folder of paperwork, her captain's bars pinned neatly to her collar. Her heart was steady. She had promised herself it would be. She made her way toward the roll call room, the same room she used to sit in as a nervous rookie years ago. She could hear voices inside before she reached the door. Laughter, easy and loose, the sound of men who had never once worried about consequences. She pushed the door open. The room was full of officers sitting in rows, waiting for their morning briefing. And there, near the front, still wearing the same smug grin she remembered from that break room years ago, was Sergeant Wade Corbin. Officer Raymond Miller sat beside him, arms crossed, mid-laugh at something Corbin had said. Officer Tobby Gordon sat a row back, phone in hand out of habit. Corbin was talking, loud enough for the room to hear. And that's when I told her, sweetheart, this ain't a beauty pageant. This is a police department. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes landed on Alice, standing in the doorway, on the captain's bars gleaming on her collar, on her face, the same face he'd once held still with a fist full of her hair wrapped around his fist. The laughter died in the room, like someone had cut the power. Miller's arms slowly uncrossed. Gordon's phone lowered, without him seeming to notice he'd moved it. Corbin's mouth stayed open for a second, no words coming out, his hand drifting up toward his own fingers like he could still feel the scissors sitting there. Nobody in the room said a thing. Officers who had laughed at that video years ago now sat frozen, watching their new captain walk to the front of the room like she owned the ground beneath her boots. Because now, she did. Alice set her folder down on the podium calmly, like this was any other Tuesday. She looked out over the room, her eyes passing over Corbin, over Miller, over Gordon, without lingering, without giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. "Good morning," Alice said, her voice clear and even. "My name is Captain Alice Vincent. I'll be leading this precinct starting today." A few officers shifted in their seats. Somewhere near the back, someone cleared their throat. "I know some of you have questions about how things are going to run under new leadership," Alice continued. "We'll get to that. For now, I expect professionalism, respect, and accountability from every officer in this room. That's not going to change, no matter who you are or how long you've been here." Her eyes flicked to Corbin for just a moment. Just long enough. "Dismissed to your assignments," she said. Chairs scraped against the floor as officers stood, filing out in uneasy silence, glancing back at their new captain like they were trying to figure out if she remembered everything, or if maybe, somehow, she didn't. She remembered everything. Outside in the hallway, Corbin pulled Miller aside near the lockers, keeping his voice low. "Relax," Corbin muttered. "It's fine. Captains come and go around here. She won't last a year. Ones who make enemies fast never make it past 18 months in this building." "You sure about that?" Miller asked. I'm sure, Corbin said. Osmar's still deputy chief. She buried this once, she'll bury it again if it comes to that. Vincent can wear all the bars she wants. Doesn't change who's really got the power around here. Miller nodded slowly, some of the tension easing out of his shoulders. Down the hallway, through the small window of her new office, Alice watched the two of them talking, heads bent close together, voices too quiet to carry. She didn't need to hear the words. She already knew what men like Corbin said to each other when they thought nobody important was listening. Alice sat down at her new desk, pulled out her old notebook, and opened it to the first page, where Fenwick's case number still sat in faded ink. She had a lot of work ahead of her, and this time she wasn't leaving until it was finished. 2 weeks into her captaincy, Alice called every officer in the precinct together for a mandatory meeting. She stood at the front of the room, arms steady behind her back, watching the same faces from roll call settle into their seats. Corbin and Miller sat near the back this time, no longer up front, no longer loud. Starting next Monday, Alice said, every officer in this precinct will wear a body camera during every shift. No exceptions. A murmur ran through the room. This isn't optional, Alice continued. It's not a suggestion. Cameras protect you when you do your job right. They protect the public when things go wrong. Either way, we're moving into a department that documents everything. No more he said, she said. No more disappearing paperwork. She let that last part hang in the air a second longer than necessary. From the back row, Corbin shifted in his seat. Miller leaned toward him, whispering something behind his hand. Alice didn't look their way, but she saw them anyway. The way you see movement out of the corner of your eye, even when you're staring straight ahead. Any questions? Alice asked. Nobody raised a hand. Good, she said. Dismissed. Officers filed out slowly, some already grumbling about the extra gear, most just glancing toward Corbin and Miller like they were waiting for a reaction that never came out loud. Alice went back to her office and sat down, letting out a breath she'd been holding since the meeting started. Cameras wouldn't fix everything, but they were a start. A way to make sure nothing that happened in this building could ever get quietly erased again. A knock sounded at her door a few minutes later. Alice looked up to find Officer Dove Whitlock standing there, glancing back over her shoulder before stepping inside and closing the door behind her. Captain, Dove said quietly. Do you have a minute? Of course, Alice said. Sit down. Dove sat, hands folded tightly in her lap, looking nervous in a way Alice recognized. She'd looked that same way once, years ago, standing outside Fenwick's office trying to work up the courage to walk in. I need to tell you something, Dove said, about the day it happened. In the break room. Alice's chest tightened, but she kept her face calm. Go on. I was there, Dove said. Not in the room, but close enough. I saw Miller drag you toward that hallway. I heard Corbin laughing before I even got to the door. I saw the whole thing happen through the little window, and I didn't do anything. I didn't report it. I didn't even tell anyone I'd seen it. I was scared of what they'd do to me if I said something. Alice sat quietly for a moment, letting the confession settle between them. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Dove continued, her voice shaking slightly. I just needed you to know the truth, and I want to help you now, however I can, quietly. I don't want this to blow up my career, but I can't sit back and watch it happen again either. Alice studied her for a long moment. She could have been angry. Part of her wanted to be. But anger wouldn't get her anywhere with the people who actually mattered. Thank you for telling me, Alice said finally. That took guts. So you're not upset? Dove asked. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't sting, Alice admitted. But you're here now. That matters more to me than what you didn't do back then. Dove let out a breath, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. I need people I can trust in this building, Alice said. People who'll tell me the truth even when it's ugly. Can you be that for me? Yes, Dove said. Whatever you need. Then let's keep this between us for now, Alice said. No announcements, no taking sides where anyone can see. Just watch, listen, and come to me if you notice anything worth knowing. Dove nodded, standing up from her chair. At the door, she paused and looked back. For what it's worth, Captain. I'm glad you came back. Alice didn't answer right away. She just gave a small nod, watching Dove slip out and close the door quietly behind her. Alone again, Alice looked out her office window at the parking lot below, at the row of patrol cars lined up for the next shift. She finally had someone on the inside. Now it was time to see who else in this building was ready to tell the truth. The grievances started small. A complaint about scheduling, filed through the union rep, claiming Alice had assigned shifts unfairly. Then another, saying she'd been disrespectful during a routine review. Then a third, vague and unsigned, accusing her of favoritism toward certain officers. Alice read each one carefully at her desk, spotting the pattern immediately. None of them held up under scrutiny. All of them were designed to make noise, not prove anything. She started hearing whispers, too. Officers going quiet when she walked past the break room. A patrol officer she barely knew glancing away fast in the parking lot. One afternoon, passing by an open doorway, she caught the tail end of a conversation between two officers she didn't recognize. Heard she only got the captain spot because the department needed the optics. You know how it is now. Gotta check the boxes. The voice stopped the second Alice's shadow crossed the doorway. She kept walking, jaw tight, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. She didn't need to guess where it was coming from. She'd seen Corbin and Miller huddled together too many times lately. Heads bent low, voices dropping whenever she got close. That evening, she requested a meeting with Deputy Chief Priya Osmar, hoping to get the grievances shut down before they piled up any higher. Osmar's office hadn't changed since the last time Alice sat in it, years ago, being handed a transfer order like a punishment wrapped in kindness. These complaints are baseless, Alice said, sliding the folder across the desk. 3 grievances in 2 weeks, all vague, all unsigned or filed by the same union rep representing the same 2 officers. This is coordinated. Osmar flipped through the folder without much interest. I'll look into it. That's what you said about my complaint 6 years ago, Alice said. And it disappeared. Osmar's eyes lifted sharply. That's a serious accusation. It's a fact, Alice said. Fenwick logged my complaint. It vanished from the system within a week. Corbin and the others got a verbal warning, and I got transferred across town. Things were handled the way they needed to be handled at the time, Osmar said, her voice cool and flat. I don't appreciate you dragging up old history to score points in a new argument. I'm not scoring points, Alice said. I'm telling you there's a pattern of officers in this precinct undermining accountability, and it's happening again, right now, aimed at me. Osmar closed the folder and pushed it back across the desk. I'll speak to the union rep. That's all I can promise you. Alice stood there a moment, searching Osmar's face for something, some flicker of concern, some sign she actually cared about getting to the truth. She found nothing but tired impatience, like Alice was a problem eating into her afternoon schedule. That's all? Alice asked. That's all, Osmar said. I have a department to run, Captain. I can't chase down every whisper that crosses my desk. Alice left the office with her jaw clenched tight, the same helpless anger rising in her chest that she remembered from 6 years ago, sitting across this exact desk while Osmar handed her a transfer order instead of justice. She walked slowly back toward her own office, replaying the conversation in her head. Osmar hadn't asked a single follow-up question about the grievances, hadn't seemed the least bit curious about who was really behind them. She'd brushed it off just like she'd brushed off everything 6 years ago. That wasn't carelessness. That was a choice. Alice stopped in the hallway, staring at nothing in particular, letting the realization settle fully into place. Osmar wasn't a neutral boss caught in the middle of an old grudge. Osmar had buried Alice's original complaint herself. If that cover-up ever came to light now, with Alice sitting in a captain's chair instead of a rookie's uniform, it wouldn't just hurt Corbin and the others. It would end Osmar's career too, which meant Osmar had every reason in the world to make sure Corbin won this fight. Every reason to let the grievances pile up until they buried Alice the same way they'd buried her the first time. Alice clenched her fists at her sides, then slowly released them. If the chain of command wasn't going to protect her, she'd have to build her own case, brick by brick, the same way she'd built her career from nothing after leaving this building the first time. She turned and walked back toward her office, already making a list in her head of the old personnel files she needed to pull. If this precinct had a pattern, she was going to find every piece of it herself. Alice stayed late that evening, long after most of the precinct had cleared out for the night. The building was quiet, except for the hum of the vending machine down the hall and the occasional crackle of a dispatch radio somewhere near the front desk. She sat alone in her office, pulled up the personnel database on her computer, and began digging through years of old records. As captain, she had access to files that had been locked away from her the first time she wore this uniform. Complaint histories, disciplinary records, personnel transfers going back over a decade. She started with Corbin's file. It was thinner than she expected for a man who'd worked the same shift for over 10 years. A few commendations, a couple of routine performance reviews, nothing that hinted at the man who had once held scissors to her hair while laughing about tradition. But buried in the transfer records, she found something. 2 names. 2 women. Officers who had worked Corbin's shift years apart from each other, both filing internal complaints, both complaints closed within days with almost no explanation. Both officers had requested transfers shortly after. Both had resigned from the department entirely within a year of that transfer. Alice pulled up the first name, Officer René Castell, and read through what little remained of her file. The complaint description was vague, redacted in places, but the shape of it was familiar enough to make Alice's stomach turn. Hostile environment. Uncomfortable incident involving Sergeant Corbin. Case reviewed and resolved. Resolved. The same word Osmar had used with Alice years ago, right before handing her a transfer order. The second name, Officer Paula Landell, told almost the same story. Different year, different specific complaint. Same pattern. Filed, reviewed, resolved, transferred. Gone within the year. Both files had been reviewed and closed by the same person. Deputy Chief Priya Osmar. Alice sat back in her chair, staring at the screen, feeling the pieces click into place one by one. This wasn't one bad joke that had gotten out of hand in a break room 6 years ago. This was a pattern, repeated at least 3 times now, maybe more, every single time buried by the same woman sitting 2 floors above Alice's office right now. The haircutting wasn't an isolated incident. It was routine. Alice's hands were shaking slightly as she printed the files, gathering the pages into a folder she planned to keep somewhere far safer than the department's own computer system. She needed someone who understood exactly how deep this cover-up went. Someone who had been inside the system when her own complaint disappeared. She picked up her phone and called Lieutenant Logan Fenwick, now working 2 precincts over, the same man who had logged her complaint all those years ago and watched it vanish before her eyes. Fenwick answered on the 3rd ring, sounding surprised to hear from her. "Captain Vincent," he said. "It's been a while." "I need your help," Alice said. "And I need to show you something in person." They met the next evening at a small diner outside the city, away from prying eyes and department gossip. Alice laid the printed files across the table between them. Fenwick's face went pale as he flipped through the pages, recognizing the same pattern Alice had seen the night before. "I had no idea there were others," he said quietly. "I thought your case was one bad decision by one supervisor covering their own mess." "It wasn't," Alice said. "It was a system, and Osmar's been running it for years." Fenwick sat back, rubbing a hand over his face. Alice could see the guilt sitting heavy on him, the same guilt she remembered seeing the day he told her. Ashamed that her file had disappeared from the system. "I want to help," Fenwick said finally. "Whatever you need. I still remember the case number I logged for you. If there's any trace of that original file left anywhere in the old servers, I'll find it." "That would mean everything," Alice said. "If we can prove my original complaint was formally filed and then deliberately deleted, that's not just a cover-up. That's evidence tampering. That's something a commission has to take seriously." Fenwick nodded slowly, folding the printed pages closed. "Give me some time. I'll start digging tomorrow, quietly." Alice reached across the table and shook his hand. "Thank you, Logan. I mean that." "I owe you this," Fenwick said. "I should have fought harder for you back then." "You're fighting now," Alice said. "That's what matters." They parted outside the diner, Fenwick heading toward his car with the weight of a promise on his shoulders. Alice standing under the parking lot lights a moment longer, watching him go. She finally had a paper trail forming. Somewhere out there, buried in old servers and forgotten files, was the proof that would bring this whole rotten system down. She just needed a little more time to gather it all. 3 days after her meeting with Fenwick, Alice arrived at her office to find a message waiting for her. Deputy Chief Osmar wanted to see her immediately. Alice walked upstairs with a knot forming in her stomach, running through everything she'd done recently, trying to guess what this could be about. She hadn't mentioned Fenwick. She hadn't mentioned the old files. As far as anyone in this building knew, she was simply running her precinct the way any new captain would. Osmar's office door was already open when Alice arrived. Osmar sat behind her desk, an evidence log printout spread out in front of her, her expression unreadable. "Sit down," Osmar said. Alice sat, keeping her face calm even as her pulse quickened. "We have a problem," Osmar said, sliding the printout across the desk. "This is an evidence log from a burglary case your precinct closed 3 weeks ago. According to this, several items logged into evidence never made it into the system correctly. Chain of custody is broken, missing signatures, a gap in the timestamps that doesn't add up." Alice scanned the page, confusion turning quickly into alarm. She recognized the case number. She remembered approving the arrest. But she had never personally handled the evidence log for it. "I didn't process this evidence," Alice said. "That would have gone through the on-duty sergeant and the evidence technician." "Your name is on the final sign-off," Osmar said, tapping a line near the bottom of the page. "Right here." Alice leaned forward, staring at the signature line. It was her name, written in a hand that looked close enough to her own at a glance, but wrong in small ways she recognized immediately. The slant was off. The way the letters connected wasn't quite right. "That's not my signature," Alice said firmly. "It certainly looks like it," Osmar said. "I'm telling you it isn't," Alice said. "Someone forged this." Osmar folded her hands on the desk, studying Alice with an expression that gave nothing away. "I'm going to be honest with you, Captain. This looks bad. A broken chain of custody on evidence from your own precinct, with your signature attached, is exactly the kind of thing that ends up in front of a review board." "Then let's find out who actually processed that evidence," Alice said. "Pull the security footage from the evidence room. Check who was on shift that night. This will clear up fast if you actually look into it." "I intend to," Osmar said. "Which is why I'm opening a formal review into your conduct." Alice felt the floor shift under her. "You're opening a review against me? Based on a forged signature that took someone 30 seconds to fake?" based on evidence with your name on it, Osmar said. I don't have the luxury of assuming good faith when a case log gets compromised. You, of all people, should understand the importance of following procedure. The words landed like a slap. Alice understood exactly what was happening now. This wasn't about procedure. This was retaliation. Dressed up in official language, timed perfectly to arrive right when Alice was starting to dig into old files that could destroy careers. Corbin and Miller couldn't win with whisper campaigns and union grievances, so they'd escalated. Somebody with access to that evidence room had planted a forged signature, knowing exactly how Osmar would react to it. And Osmar, whether she realized it or not, was playing her part perfectly, just like she had 6 years ago. This is a setup, Alice said. Someone forged my name to open exactly this kind of review. That's a serious accusation without any proof, Osmar said. So is accusing me of mishandling evidence, Alice shot back, based on a signature that isn't mine. Osmar's expression hardened. The review is already opening, Captain. I'd suggest you cooperate fully and let the process play out. Alice stood up slowly, her hands steady despite the anger burning in her chest. I will. And when it turns out this signature is forged, I expect this precinct to look just as hard at who did it. If that's what the evidence shows, Osmar said, that's exactly what will happen. Alice didn't believe her. Not for a second. She walked out of the office and down the stairs, her mind racing. Corbin and Miller were getting desperate, which meant they were getting careless too. Somewhere in this building, there was proof of who actually forged that signature, who actually handled that evidence log the night it went missing. She just had to find it before the review board found a way to end her career using a lie with her name signed at the bottom. Back in her office, Alice pulled out a fresh folder and began writing everything down. The date, the forged signature, every detail of the conversation with Osmar. Whatever came next, she wasn't going down without dragging the truth into the light with her. Officer Tobby Gordon sat alone in his apartment that night, an old phone resting on the coffee table in front of him like it was something dangerous. He hadn't touched it in months. He kept it charged out of habit, tucked away in a drawer, telling himself he'd delete the video someday, and never quite doing it. Tonight, with rumors spreading through the precinct about a forged signature and a formal review against Captain Vincent, something in him had finally cracked. He picked up the phone and opened the video. There he was, 6 years younger, laughing behind the camera while Corbin cut Alice's hair off in the break room. He watched his own laughter on the recording and felt sick listening to it now. Back then, it had felt like nothing, a joke. Everybody was doing it. Everybody thought it was funny, so he'd filmed it without thinking twice. He didn't feel that way anymore. Gordon had watched what happened over the past few weeks. Watched Corbin and Miller whisper in hallways. Watched grievances pile up against Alice for no real reason. Watched the tension in the building grow tighter every single day. He didn't know exactly what they'd done to get Alice suspended for evidence tampering, but he had a feeling. He always had a feeling with those two. His thumb hovered over the delete button. If this video disappeared, nobody could ever prove what really happened that day. Corbin's story would win. It always won. Before he could press it, his phone buzzed with a text. Can we talk? Dove Gordon set the old phone down slowly and answered his other phone instead. A few minutes later, Dove Whitlock was standing in his doorway, arms crossed, studying him carefully, like she already knew what he'd been about to do. You still have it, Dove said. It wasn't a question. Gordon glanced at the old phone sitting on the table. I was about to get rid of it. Don't, Dove said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Tobby, don't you dare. It doesn't matter anymore, Gordon said, sitting down heavily on his couch. It happened 6 years ago. Nobody cares. Vincent cares, Dove said. And so do I. That video is the only proof of what really happened in that break room, straight from the source. No edits, no group chat caption making it look like some harmless joke. Gordon rubbed a hand over his face. If I hand that over, Corbin's going to know it came from me. Miller, too. I'll be finished at this precinct. You're already isolated from them, Dove said gently. You've barely spoken to Corbin in weeks. I've watched you pull away from both of them ever since Vincent came back. You know what they did was wrong. You've known it this whole time. Gordon didn't answer right away. He stared down at his hands, remembering the sound of the scissors, the way Alice had stood there and taken it without giving them a single tear to laugh at. I laughed, Gordon said quietly. The whole time, I stood there laughing. You can't change that, Dove said. But you can stop protecting the people who made you laugh at something that ugly. Gordon picked up the old phone again, turning it over in his hands. If I give this to you, he said, what happens to me? I don't know, Dove admitted, but if you delete it, you'll always know you had the chance to do the right thing and chose not to. Gordon sat with that for a long moment. Then, slowly, he held the phone out to her. Take it, he said, before I change my mind. Dove took the phone carefully, like it was something fragile. Thank you, Tobby. This matters more than you know. Just don't tell them it was me, Gordon said. Not yet. Not until it's already done. I won't, Dove promised. She left his apartment a few minutes later, driving straight to Alice's house, instead of waiting until morning. Alice met her at the door, still in her off-duty clothes, surprised to see Dove standing there so late. Dove held out the old phone without a word. Alice took it, opened the video, and watched it once, all the way through, her face unreadable in the porch light. She saw her younger self standing perfectly still while Corbin's scissors did their work. She heard her own silence, louder than anything Corbin or Miller or Gordon had said that day. This is real, Alice said quietly. Untouched. Time-stamped. It's everything, Dove said. Alice closed the video and looked up at Dove, something hard and steady settling behind her eyes. Now I have what I need, she said. By the end of the week, Alice had everything laid out on her desk, like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. Fenwick's paper trail, proving her original complaint, had been formally logged and later deleted. Whitlock's written statement about witnessing the assault and staying silent out of fear. And now, Gordon's unedited video, time-stamped and untouched, showing exactly what happened in that break room 6 years ago. She filed a formal request for an emergency disciplinary hearing against Sergeant Corbin, submitting every piece of evidence directly to the Police Commission's review office instead of routing it through Osmar first. The hearing moved fast, faster than Alice expected. 2 days later, word came down that Corbin had been suspended pending review. Alice heard the news standing in the precinct hallway, and for one brief, warm moment, something in her chest finally loosened. 6 years of carrying this alone, and now, finally, the system was moving in the right direction. She allowed herself that moment. She let it sit in her chest for the rest of the afternoon, watching officers whisper about Corbin's empty desk, watching Miller avoid eye contact with everyone who passed him in the hallway. The moment didn't last. The next morning, Alice was called into Osmar's office. She walked in expecting an update on the hearing. What she got instead felt like the floor dropping out beneath her. There's a problem with the evidence, Osmar said, sliding a document across her desk. The video was obtained outside of proper chain of custody. Officer Gordon's phone was handed to Whitlock, who handed it to you. That's not admissible under department procedure. It's the truth, Alice said. Time-stamped, unedited, straight from the original source. That doesn't matter if procedure wasn't followed, Osmar said flatly. And the original complaint file Fenwick claims to have recovered was never formally reinstated after it was removed from the system years ago. Without proper reinstatement, it's inadmissible as well. Alice stared at her, disbelief turning slowly into fury. You're the one who deleted it in the first place. That's a serious accusation, Osmar said, her voice cold. It's the truth, Alice said again, louder this time. Osmar didn't flinch. Sergeant Corbin has been reinstated, effective this morning. There simply isn't enough properly documented evidence to support disciplinary action. Alice felt the room tilt slightly. 6 years of careful work, undone by a technicality invented by the very person who created the problem in the first place. And that's not all, Osmar continued. The evidence tampering review regarding your forged signature is moving forward. Given the seriousness of the allegations and the pattern of conflict you've brought into this precinct since your return, I'm suspending you from your captaincy, effective immediately, pending the outcome of that investigation. Alice felt her whole body go still. You're suspending me, while the man who assaulted me walks free. I'm following procedure, Osmar said. You're protecting him, Alice said. Just like you protected him 6 years ago. Just like you protected him with those other 2 women whose files I found buried in your system. Something flickered across Osmar's face, gone almost as fast as it appeared. I don't know what you think you found, Captain, but I'd be careful about accusations you can't prove. Alice didn't say another word. She stood up, turned, and walked out of the office before she said something she couldn't take back. She spent the rest of the day clearing out her office, boxing up files and personal items with hands that refused to shake, even though everything inside her wanted to. As she carried the last box down the hallway, she passed beneath one of the small body cameras mounted near the ceiling, the ones she had mandated department-wide just weeks earlier. A tiny red light blinked steadily above the lens, quiet and constant, recording everything happening in this hallway right now, the same way it had been recording everything happening in every hallway of this building since the day she'd installed them. Alice stopped walking. She looked up at the camera for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. She hadn't installed those cameras thinking about herself. She'd installed them for accountability, for the next officer who might need proof nobody could bury. But cameras didn't care whose behavior they captured. They recorded everyone. Officers on patrol, officers in hallways, officers sitting behind desks giving orders they thought no one would ever be able to prove, including Osmar's own office, just down that same hallway, wired the same as every other room in this building. Alice carried her box out to her car, set it down in the trunk, and sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine. She wasn't finished. Not even close. She just needed to find out exactly what those cameras had already caught. 2 days into her suspension, Alice sat in a small coffee shop on the edge of the city, far from the precinct and anyone who might recognize her. She wrapped both hands around a cup she hadn't touched, staring out the window at nothing in particular. The bell above the door rang. Lieutenant Logan Fenwick walked in, spotted her, and slid into the booth across from her without wasting time on small talk. "I found it," he said. Alice sat up straighter. "Found what?" "The metadata," Fenwick said, pulling a folded stack of papers from his jacket and laying them flat on the table. "From the old server backup. Your original complaint. The one that vanished from the system 6 years ago." Alice pulled the papers toward her, scanning them fast. There it was, in black and white. The case number she'd carried in her notebook for 6 years. The date, the timestamp, her name, and the details of what happened in that break room, exactly as she'd told Fenwick the day she filed it. And beneath that, a second timestamp. A deletion log, buried in the server's backup history, showing exactly when the file had been removed from the active system, and which administrative account had done it. "This is real," Alice said quietly. "This is proof." "It's more than proof of the deletion," Fenwick said. "It shows your complaint was formally logged, formally reviewed, and then illegally removed from department records. That's not just an ignored HR complaint anymore, Vincent. That's evidence tampering. That's obstruction. Somebody could go to prison for this." Alice looked up from the papers. "Whose account deleted it?" Fenwick met her eyes. "Administrative access, tied directly to the deputy chief's login credentials. Osmar's account." Alice sat back slowly, letting that settle into her chest. She had suspected it for weeks, ever since she found those other two women's files buried under the same handling, closed by the same person. But seeing it laid out in cold, undeniable data was different. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was proof. "She's been protecting Corbin this whole time," Alice said. "Not just 6 years ago. She's the one who made the video inadmissible. She's the one who reinstated Corbin. She's the one who opened this fake evidence tampering review against me. And now we can prove she buried your original complaint herself," Fenwick said. "Which means every excuse she's used to protect Corbin and bury you falls apart. If she manipulated evidence rules to protect herself once, a commission is going to want to know how many other times she's done exactly the same thing." Alice felt something steady settle into place inside her. The same feeling she used to get right before walking into a dangerous call. That clear, focused calm that pushed fear aside and left only purpose behind. "This changes everything," she said. "But it's not enough yet." "What do you mean?" Fenwick asked. "This proves the original cover-up." "It proves what happened 6 years ago," Alice said. "But it doesn't prove what she did this week. The forged signature, my suspension. If we bring the commission the old evidence without connecting it to what's happening right now, Osmar will just say it's ancient history, unrelated to a current review that's still technically following procedure." Fenwick sat back, considering that. "You need something showing she's still doing it, right now, in real time." "I do," Alice said. She thought back to the hallway outside Osmar's office, the small red light blinking steadily above the doorway, recording everything happening inside that building since the day Alice mandated it department-wide. "The body cameras," Alice said slowly. "I installed them in every hallway, every office corridor, including outside Osmar's own door." Fenwick's eyes widened slightly. "You think there's footage of her ordering the setup against you?" "I think there might be," Alice said. "If she said anything incriminating near that hallway, or if anyone else did on her behalf, it's sitting in that system right now, waiting to be pulled." "How do we get access?" Fenwick asked. "You're suspended. You don't have clearance anymore." Alice thought of Dove Whitlock, still inside the building, still trusted, still quietly watching everything happening around her exactly the way Alice had asked her to. "I know someone who does," Alice said. She gathered the metadata papers carefully, sliding them into a folder alongside Fenwick's original notes. "Thank you, Logan," she said. "I mean that. This is the piece that ties everything together." "There's still one piece missing," Fenwick said. "I know," Alice said, standing up from the booth. "And I know exactly who's going to help me find it." Dove Whitlock waited until the night shift thinned out before slipping into the small records room near the back of the precinct. Her badge still worked. Nobody had told the system to lock her out of anything, because nobody suspected she'd been helping Alice all along. She sat down at the terminal and logged into the body camera archive, the same system Alice had installed months earlier, back when cameras were just supposed to mean modernization and accountability. Nothing more. Dove typed in the date range Alice had asked her to check. The week of the forged signature. The week Alice got suspended. She started with the hallway camera outside Osmar's office, scrolling slowly through hours of quiet footage. Officers walking past, doors opening and closing. Nothing unusual. Then she found it. Time-stamped 2 days before Alice's suspension. The footage showed Osmar standing in her doorway, speaking to someone just out of frame. Dove turned up the volume, leaning closer to the screen. The evidence log discrepancy needs to point back to Vincent directly, Osmar's voice said, low but perfectly clear on the recording. I don't care how you get her signature close enough. Just make sure it holds up long enough to justify opening a review. A second voice answered, muffled but recognizable. Miller. It'll hold, Miller said. Corbin already worked out the details. Good, Osmar said. The moment this review opens, I suspend her. That buys us time to bury whatever else she's been digging up. Dove felt her stomach drop. She sat frozen for a moment, staring at the screen, listening to the recording loop back to the beginning automatically. She played it again, just to be sure she hadn't imagined it. She hadn't. Osmar hadn't just failed to investigate the forged signature properly. She had ordered it. She had told Miller exactly what she needed the fabricated evidence to accomplish, and then used it exactly the way she'd planned, suspending Alice the moment the review opened. Dove copied the footage onto a secure drive with shaking hands, checking twice to make sure the file transferred completely before pulling it from the system. She logged out of the terminal, tucked the drive into her jacket pocket, and left the records room like she'd never been there at all. She drove straight to Alice's house, the same way she had the night she brought over Gordon's old phone. Alice opened the door before Dove even reached the porch, like she'd been waiting by the window. Tell me you found something, Alice said. Dove held up the drive. Everything. They sat together at Alice's kitchen table, the laptop open between them, and Dove played the footage from the beginning. Alice watched in silence, her face hardening with every word that came out of Osmar's mouth on the recording. When it finished, Alice sat back slowly, staring at the frozen image of Osmar's doorway on the screen. She said it herself, Alice said quietly, out loud. On camera, she forgot was even running. She probably never thought anyone would actually pull hallway footage outside her own office, Dove said. She's been protecting herself for so long, I don't think it occurred to her that the system you built would end up catching her, too. Alice let out a slow breath, feeling the full weight of everything come together at once. Gordon's unedited video from 6 years ago. Fenwick's recovered metadata proving the original cover-up. Whitlock's sworn statement about witnessing the assault. And now, Osmar's own voice, caught on the very cameras Alice had installed, ordering Miller to fabricate evidence and orchestrating Alice's suspension in real time. 4 pieces. 6 years of buried truth, all sitting on the table in front of her, finally complete. This is everything, Alice said. This is enough. What happens now? Dove asked. Alice closed the laptop carefully, holding on to the drive like it was the most valuable thing she owned. Now I take this straight to the commission, Alice said. Not through Osmar. Not through anyone who can bury it again. A public hearing, with all 4 pieces laid out together, where nobody can quietly make it disappear. They're going to fight you, Dove said. Corbin, Miller, Osmar. All of them. Let them fight, Alice said. They've had 6 years to bury this. I've had 6 years to build it back up, piece by piece, until there wasn't anything left for them to hide behind. She looked at Dove, steady and certain. It's time, Alice said. Let's finish this. The commission hearing room was packed. Alice had made sure of that, filing her request for a public session instead of a private one, inviting local press along with her formal evidence submission. She wanted witnesses. She wanted this out in the open, where nothing could quietly disappear the way her original complaint had 6 years ago. She sat at a long table facing the commission panel, a folder in front of her. Fenwick and Whitlock seated in the front row behind her for support. Across the room, Corbin sat stiff and unreadable beside Miller. Both men in dress uniform, both refusing to look her way. Osmar sat near the front as well, arms folded, her expression carefully composed, like she still believed she could talk her way through this. The panel chair called the hearing to order. "Captain Vincent," the chair said, "you requested this session to present evidence regarding conduct within your precinct. Please proceed." Alice stood. Her voice was steady. "6 years ago, I was a rookie officer at this precinct," she began. "Sergeant Wade Corbin, along with Officer Raymond Miller and Officer Tobby Gordon, assaulted me in a break room, physically restraining me while cutting my hair off as what they called a joke. I have the original, unedited footage of that assault, recovered directly from Officer Gordon's phone." She played the video on the screen behind her. The room went dead silent, watching Corbin grab the scissors, watching Miller pin her arms, watching her own younger face stay perfectly still while it happened. Corbin's jaw tightened. Miller stared at the floor. "I reported this the same day," Alice continued. "Lieutenant Fenwick logged my complaint formally, with a case number and timestamp." She held up Fenwick's recovered metadata. That file was deleted from department records within a week, under an administrative login tied directly to Deputy Chief Osmar. A murmur ran through the room. Osmar's arms tightened across her chest, her face losing some of its composure. "This wasn't isolated," Alice said. "I found 2 other officers who filed similar complaints against Sergeant Corbin over the past decade. Both cases were closed the same way mine was. Both officers resigned within a year. Both files were reviewed and closed by Deputy Chief Osmar." She pulled up the old personnel records on the screen, watching the panel members lean forward, watching reporters in the back row scribbling notes fast. "When I returned to this precinct as captain," Alice continued, "I instituted body cameras department-wide. Weeks later, someone forged my signature on an evidence log, fabricating a case of misconduct against me. I have sworn testimony from Officer Dove Whitlock, who witnessed the original assault years ago and stayed silent out of fear. I also have this." She played the final piece of footage. Osmar's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "The evidence log discrepancy needs to point back to Vincent directly. The moment this review opens, I suspend her." The room erupted into whispers. A reporter near the back stood up briefly before sitting back down. Osmar's face had gone pale, her arms dropping to her sides. "That footage was pulled from a hallway camera outside Deputy Chief Osmar's own office," Alice said. "The same system I mandated for accountability across this precinct. It shows her ordering the fabrication of evidence against me and using it to justify my suspension less than 2 weeks ago." The panel chair sat back, exchanging a grim look with the officer beside her. "Captain Vincent," the chair said. "Thank you. The panel will deliberate." The deliberation didn't take long. 15 minutes later, the panel returned to their seats, and the chair addressed the room directly. "Based on the evidence presented," the chair said, "this commission finds sufficient grounds to terminate Sergeant Wade Corbin and Officer Raymond Miller, effective immediately, for the assault documented in this footage and for the fabrication of evidence against Captain Vincent." Corbin's face went rigid. Miller slumped in his chair, staring straight ahead, saying nothing. "Furthermore," the chair continued, "given the evidence of deliberate record deletion and obstruction by Deputy Chief Priya Osmar, this commission is suspending her immediately, pending criminal referral for evidence tampering and obstruction of an internal complaint." Osmar stood up fast, opening her mouth to object, but 2 officers were already moving toward her, waiting to escort her from the room. Alice didn't watch her go. She kept her eyes forward, steady, feeling 6 years of buried weight finally lift off her chest all at once. Behind her, Fenwick and Whitlock stood, applause breaking out quietly from the press section, spreading slowly through the rest of the room. Corbin was led out in handcuffs pending further investigation, refusing to meet anyone's eyes as he passed the table where Alice stood. It was over. 1 week after the hearing, Alice stood before the commission panel one final time. This time, the room felt different, lighter. No cameras full of evidence, no forged signatures, no accusations hanging in the air. The chair looked out at her with something close to respect. "Captain Vincent," the chair said, "following a full review of the circumstances surrounding your suspension, this commission unanimously votes to reinstate you as permanent captain of your precinct, effective immediately." A quiet round of applause moved through the room. Alice nodded once, keeping her composure, though something warm finally settled in her chest after weeks of carrying so much weight alone. "Additionally," the chair continued, "this commission is adopting new department-wide accountability reforms based directly on your case. Mandatory body camera policies, stricter chain of custody requirements for internal complaints, and an independent review process for any complaint involving command staff, ensuring no future officer's case file can simply disappear." Alice thought of the case number she'd carried in her notebook for 6 years, the one Fenwick had logged the same day this all started. It would never disappear again. Neither would anyone else's. "Thank you," Alice said simply. "This isn't just my victory. It's for every officer who was told to stay quiet." She left the hearing room that afternoon and drove straight back to her precinct. Walking through the front doors felt different this time. Officers nodded to her in the hallway, real respect in their eyes now, not the uneasy silence that had followed her since her first day back. Word had already spread through the whole building about the hearing, about Corbin and Miller being led out in handcuffs, about Osmar's suspension, and the criminal referral that would likely end her career for good. Alice made her way toward the break room. She hadn't set foot in it since becoming captain. She'd walked past it 100 times, always finding a reason to avoid it, always feeling the ghost of that day linger just behind the door. She pushed it open now. The room looked almost exactly the same as it had 6 years ago. Same tables, same worn linoleum floor. But it didn't feel the same anymore. It felt smaller somehow, less powerful, just a room, nothing more. Officers were gathered inside, some grabbing coffee before their shift, some talking quietly among themselves. Dove Whitlock stood near the counter, steady and calm as always. Tobby Gordon sat at a table by the window, no longer isolated, no longer avoiding everyone's eyes. He looked up when Alice walked in, something like relief crossing his face. The room quieted as officers noticed their captain standing in the doorway. Alice walked to the center of the room, the same spot where Corbin had once stood over her with a pair of scissors, laughing while a room full of people watched and did nothing. She reached up and ran a hand through her hair, short and natural, worn exactly the way she wanted it, exactly the way it had grown back over 6 long years of proving herself, one shift, one exam, one promotion at a time. Nobody in this room was laughing today. "I know this precinct has a complicated history," Alice said, her voice carrying clearly across the room. "Some of you were here for the worst of it. Some of you are new, and you're only hearing about it secondhand. Either way, that history ends today. This building runs on accountability now. That's not a threat. That's a promise." She looked around the room slowly, meeting eyes that used to look away from her, meeting Dove's steady gaze, meeting Gordon's quiet nod. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," Alice said. "Real work. The kind that earns this badge back its meaning." She let the silence sit for a moment, comfortable now instead of tense. Then she smiled, small and sure, and looked out at her officers, her precinct, her building, finally, completely hers. Let's get to work. The room shifted into motion behind her, officers heading toward their shifts, toward patrol cars waiting outside, toward a department that finally, after 6 long years, belonged to someone who refused to let it break her. Alice Vincent walked out of the break room and into the hallway, Captain's bars catching the morning light, 6 years of buried truth finally standing tall behind her. She never looked back. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.